So we've made our goal specific. The next thing we're going to do is make it measurable. And we got our scientist friend here. He's going to ask us, how can we put a number on it? How can we quantify it? Measurable goals provide quantitative criteria. And the reason we need quantitative criteria is we want to know when we've met our goal. We want to know how close we've gotten to our goal. And numbers help us do that. Some outcomes are easy to measure. Who is the best women's soccer team in the world? Obviously, that's the United States. There is a clear series of how to win points within a game and how many games you win, get you to the World Cup, and then a playoff system. And there's just like very intricate, very like quantifiable point-based system for deciding who's the best at things like sports. I like using soccer examples because I only have to update them every 4 years. Some outcomes are the opposite. Some outcomes are just impossible to put a number on. Something like attitude. If you've ever worked with someone who had a bad attitude and you're trying to like give them feedback or try to help them improve, how do you set a goal for improving attitude? You could say, oh, you have to say thank you 10 times a day. But even people that have attitude, they often say thank you. It's just the way they say it that's the attitude, right? So how do you take something like attitude, which is just so difficult to quantify, and assess quantitative goals to it? It's very difficult, and I would say this is the rule that usually we're dealing with issues of performance that are hard to quantify, not the exception. The exception is when it's easy to quantify things. So because so many things are so difficult to quantify, we often rely on something called a proxy measure. And a proxy measure is when I want to measure X, I'm interested in X, but X is hard to measure, so I'm going to measure Y instead. An example of this is points on your driving record, your DMV driving record. So insurance companies want to know whether you're a safe driver or not. So they look at your DMV points, which counts how many accidents you've had and how many speeding tickets you've had. That is a proxy measure for driving ability. And it's a pretty good one, a pretty accurate one. But it's not 100% accurate. You can be an amazing driver and live in San Francisco, and you're going to get in an accident occasionally just because it's a really difficult place to drive. You can be an absolutely horrible driver in Kansas, and you never get in an accident because there's nothing to hit. So it's still a proxy. It's still an estimate of driving ability, not driving ability per se. Well, why do they use it? What else are they going to do? Send a insurance agent out to drive around with you for a week and see what a good driver you are and rate your driving? It would be incredibly expensive, incredibly time consuming, and not any more accurate because you would drive differently with the insurance agent in your car than outside of it. So we're interested in driving ability. That's really, really hard to measure. So instead we count tickets and we count accidents as proxy measures. Even with things that seem very easily quantifiable, often the thing that we're interested in is not actually the thing that we quantify. So think of sales as like the perfect example of an easily quantifiable variable. I'm interested in your performance as a salesperson, so I measure how many sales, or I measure the value of your sales each time period, each quarter, whatever. And that would seem to be a pretty good measure of sales performance. And it is a pretty good measure, but it is not sales performance per se. There are things that affect your sales each month that are independent of you as a salesperson. Depending on what you're selling, the weather can influence it, the quality of the product, things that are going on in the market, economic downturns, the marketing of the product. So all of these things that you as a salesperson have zero control over get included in that measure of sales ability if we're just looking at sales. So even when things appear to be very easily quantifiable, often they really are a proxy measure for the thing that we're genuinely interested in. We basically have to use proxy measures. There are times when we just cannot measure the thing that we're actually interested in. The problem is that we start confusing the proxy measure for the thing that we're actually interested in. Let me give you an example of this. When police start wearing body cameras, they've done a lot of studies, different police forces all over the United States. When police start wearing body cameras, reports of police abuse drop, complaints of police abuse drop. Now, if you ask civil rights activists why this is happening, they say, look, these cops were going around smacking people up, and then they had to wear body cameras. They know they're being recorded. And so because they know they're being recorded, they've quit abusing people. Police unions make the opposite argument. They say, whoa, we were never abusing people. We have always been model police people, police officers. And now that we're wearing body cameras, people aren't making fake complaints. It was always just made up fake complaints about abuse. And now because people know there's an objective recording, they're not making these fake complaints anymore. Which one of those theories or which one of those explanations is correct? We don't know. You probably think one is more correct than the other, but actually you have no basis for saying that, right? And the issue for that is because we are interested in police abuse. That's the thing we want to measure. But the thing we actually measured is complaints of abuse. So the only thing we can say is that when police start wearing body cameras, complaints of abuse drop. We don't know if abuse itself actually drops. So you can see how easy it is to confuse the thing we're really interested in with the way that we measure it. And you need to be so careful about this because once you start measuring something, it just is such a powerful force of human behavior that if we know that is the thing being measured, we will chase after that thing, whatever it is. An example of this is I used to just laugh. I'd see my colleagues pacing around the room during committee meetings and stuff, trying to get their 10,000 paces on their Fitbit for the day, and it just seemed so hilarious to me. And then I got a Fitbit and I was like, whoa, I gotta get my 10,000, I want to see the cool animation at the end, or whatever it is. And so that is just human psychology right there, that if I put a band on your wrist that has numbers that go up for a specific behavior, you will start doing that behavior over and over again. So you have to be very careful about which proxy measure you choose, because however you measure things, that's what's defining human behavior. Let me give you an example of how this can go wrong. If you've ever seen The Wire, they talk about juking the stats. And what they mean by that is you get a new mayor that comes into office and they want to show that crime is down during their first quarter. So they lean really hard on the police chief. The problem is that we don't actually measure crime. We measure arrests. And so what the police chief will do to make it appear as if crime has gone down is that they will pull back on arrests, and they'll take things that could be either a felony or a misdemeanor, and they'll give people misdemeanors for it. So if you get in a bar fight, that should be assault and battery, which is a felony, a violent crime. But you can also give someone a misdemeanor disturbing the peace citation. And so to make it appear as if crime has gone down, they'll start giving out misdemeanors instead of felonies. And when you look at the statistics, you're like, oh, wow, violent crime, assault and battery, those things have all gone down this quarter. But it's not because the actual crime has gone down. It's because arrests have gone down, which is the exact opposite of what you're actually trying to achieve. So you have to be so careful about what you choose to measure, because that's what people pursue. And if you're not careful about it, you can actually wind up encouraging people to do the exact opposite behavior of what you want. All right, so we have our goal here, and we've got our scientist, and he says, how do we put a number on it? This is one of those goals it's really easy to put a number on. So we'll just say 10 profit, 10 not-for-profit, and 10 government organizations. And now this is quantifiable, it's measurable.